Hello and welcome to Throwback Thursday. Today I want to have a bit of a talk to you about the more traditional ways of getting our horses ready for a ride. So maybe ready for a trail ride or ready for a lesson or whatever it is we're doing. But quite often we like to do a little bit of something first before just jumping on. Now we might think that the horse is a bit fresh, perhaps it's done to warm the horse up, for example. We might want to warm its muscles up before we get on. That seems like a sensible idea. Or we might be worried perhaps the horse hasn't been worked for a while, so we might be a little bit worried that the horse is fresh. And perhaps we want to maybe get the buck out of the horse, let it have a run around, a bit of a buck before we ride. And they're all the sorts of reasons that we do want to try and prepare a horse for learning. So rather than jumping straight on and seeing what the horse has got, perhaps we do one of these things before. And today I want to concentrate on those sort of three of the traditional things that people have done. And the first one is lunging. So that might be just lunge, and what I mean by lunging is just on one rein, and that might be on a long lunge rein, or it could be even on a short 12-foot line or something, just where the horse is attached to you and moving around you. The other one is round pen, where you run the horse around the pen, and high-speed liberty work, which is similar to that, might be done in an arena or in a somewhere enclosed environment. Great topic. Thank you, Felicity. Glad to see you here. So those are things we might try and do. Let's have a look at the problems with these sorts of things first of all. The first thing is, as we all know, horses are great pattern learners. So whatever you do to prepare your horse for riding, it's going to be learning that pattern. So let's say you're the 12-foot line person and you like to, make the horse go walk, trot and canter around both directions on a 12-foot line. If your horse rather enjoys that and barks and, has a bit of a snort, you are teaching that pattern. So for the horse, it means after you've been saddled, you go out, this is the first thing you do. So when you can't do that with the horse, when you can't lunge or put your horse on the line, that pattern may well still be there. So if you're in a situation where you actually have to get on first, that will be your horse's first and most possible response will be to have his little bit of fun and his stretch out and his little buck and his snort. Probably not a pattern you really want to teach. And the next thing is the chasing aspect of this. Some of our horses we feel are quite lazy, and especially if you've got a horse that isn't keen to move, this is a big problem, because what happens is that you put the horse on the lunge or in the round pen or on the line, and the horse doesn't want to move. And you then really have no choice but to chase the horse. And so what ends up happening is you get closer and closer to the horse with your whip or the stick or whatever it is that you've got, your piece of rope. And you are, in fact, chasing the horse. And so that then leads to all sorts of other problems, doesn't it? Because the last thing you want to do is frighten the horse. And that may make the horse afraid of you, which is also a really bad thing. The other thing that it does, which is the most important thing that we actually don't do, is that it gives the horse another possible response. So what happens when we start using negative reinforcement with horse training is that the horse comes up with a shopping list of possible responses. So let's say we pick up pressure on the right rein. The horse, one possible response might be to stop. One possible response might be to turn right. One possible response might be to step backwards with that right foot. There are all sorts of possible responses. If you chase the horse and the horse takes flight, what you've done is you've added flight to that shopping list. So when you go to teach your horse something new, if it responds with flight, that's because that has been conditioned in that horse as a possible response to a new request that it doesn't understand. And that's quite easily taught, and that stays with the horse. Because flight is easy for the horse to do, it's easy for the horse to move forward and to leave, and it gets an immediate response. Because if you chase the horse and the horse leaves, it's got release from that pressure because you were the pressure going towards the horse. So it's an immediate, it's very easy to teach that. And we actually really want to avoid that. We want to avoid teaching the horse flight as a possible response, because when you teach something new, you don't want that to go. You'd much rather have, step right as a possible response. So that's something to bear in mind. And also, what you're doing really by running your horse around in circles is you're making it more fit. So you're building muscle. Now, you're not necessarily building the muscle that's going to be useful for the horse. You're not going to be building top line, but you're making the horse fitter. And so I think, probably the only thing worse than an unfit, untrained horse is a fit, untrained horse. So because it's more difficult to deal with. So really, let's, start now thinking about these different things in particular. So if we think about the round pen, for example, what's wrong with the picture of getting your horse warmed up in the round pen? So when we're talking about fitness and building muscle, quite often when the horse is working free in the round pen, it's bent to the outside of the circle. Now, that's not something we really ever want the horse to be. That's not a useful thing for the horse to learn. And if you look at Liberty work, and I encourage you to go along and have a look at some YouTube Liberty work and things, look at the horse's ears. Quite often they spend a lot of time with their ears pinned. And, you know the difference between the ears. You know that sort of relaxed, concentrating on the trainer type of ears, as opposed to the pinned ears, which is a very, very different deal. So when the ears are pinned, the horse is very much telling the trainer something. And I think you should listen to that. And I don't think it's something you necessarily want to encourage the horse to do. Lunging is much the same, and we've all lunged a lazy horse. Again, its head is, if you've got one line, its head is usually in the air, so which means its back is often hollow, its hind quarter is trailing behind. Again, you're not building those top line muscles, which you're going to want to use later to have the horse carry you and round its back and soften and bent to the outside. Again, that's not very useful. Quite often you'll see horses lunging, they're leaning into the circle, again, something you don't want to teach. But you've got to remember that with everything that you spend time doing with the horse, you are training it. So you're teaching all of these things, where even if you only think you're warming the horse up to get ready, get its muscles warm, get it ready to ride, you're actually teaching it all of these possible responses, which are going to come out under saddle. The other thing with all of these things is that bucking quite often comes into it, especially when the horse is fresh, and you a bit of sort of post-inhibitory rebound effect. You get it out of the stable or whatever it might be, and it has a bit of a buck. Well, again, it's something that, because you can't correct that, and certainly if you're not holding it or you don't have a line on all that Liberty work, you cannot correct that, and so it is something that you are training the horse to do. Also, I find quite often that the horse working at Liberty or on one lunge line will pick up the wrong lead of canter. Now, that's more easily corrected when the horse is working free in the round pen, but it's still not a good deal. It's not great, because you don't want the horse to practice picking up the wrong lead of canter. Okay, so what can we do using these lunging and round pen and Liberty work? How can we warm up the horse? And I think the most important thing to remember is these things are useful if they're structured. So go out there with a plan. So let's say you're doing round pen. Let's say you've got a lovely round pen. That's where you want to warm your horse up. Now, there's specific things in the round pen that you can teach that are useful. For example, you can go out and you can teach your horse 2 different types of turn. You can teach it outside turn, which is turn away from me. You could teach it inside turn, turn towards me. Now, teaching both those things can be done in walk or trot. It's easier to teach it in trot because the horse is a little bit more motivated with a bit more movement. But it doesn't entail going around and around and around and exhausting the horse. What it means is you could do half a circle at trot, perhaps half a round at trot, and then ask for a turn. And once the horse can differentiate between the inside and outside turns, which is all about your body language, where you're standing, where you're putting the pressure, then you can start going inside turn, outside turn, and you're really engaging the horse then. So you're using the negative reinforcement of the pressure that you're putting on the horse just from your body language, and the horse is getting a release for making the correct turn. So what you're doing is you're building your bubble of communication. So you're actually engaging the horse with something, and he's getting the right answer and he's finding the release of pressure in that correct answer. So then you can get on, you already built your bubble, and you can take your bubble and your horse out. Whereas if the horse has just been running around, you're actually two separate things. You know, the horse is out here somewhere and, you know, you're in the middle without the horse. You're two separate things. So when you do get back on, you've got to start building all this bubble again. But your horse has already been chased and is not really keen to get in your bubble anymore. So structure is really important. Know what you're going to teach and have a reason to teach it. The nice thing about teaching inside and outside turns in the round pen is that it is very useful for horses that haven't had a lot of handling, because they learn about negative reinforcement. They learn that there is a correct response to the pressure they feel, which might be the pressure of you getting closer to them. And when they find that correct response, that pressure will be released, meaning you'll get further away from them. And it's a really nice, quiet way of introducing a horse to negative reinforcement. The other thing to remember is that the last thing you want is to tire your horse out. And these sorts of things, these sorts of preparation techniques are used to get the buck out of the horse. You know, I'll just run around the round pen and get the buck out of him and then I'll ride him. And the problem is the horse that bucks has probably also been off for a while, has had a bit of a break. So he's probably not physically fit and probably not mentally fit. So what you've done in those 10 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you've taken to get the buck out of the horse is you've wasted all of your mental and physical alertness. So when you then get on, and by the time you've got your bubble happening again and he actually wants to talk to you because you've been chasing him around the yard, you've run out of horse. So your horse is in no state then to actually absorb and learn the lesson that you wanted to teach for that day. All he is a little bit less keen on you, I imagine, and it's a little bit fitter. So tomorrow when you come out, you're going to have to lunge him for a bit longer. So if we talk about, so that's round pen. The other thing, I had somebody with me this week who likes to lunge their horse, and they actually have a horse on livery somewhere, and you're not allowed to long line, because I'd always say, well, just long line the horse because, it's so much better than lunging. So we had to work out a way that lunging was useful for her and the horse. And so it's a really nice exercise when it's controlled. And so it's a great place to do walk, trot, halt transitions with the horse long and low and stretching out, so it's stretching out its top line. The horse is nice and relaxed. This will not work for a horse that's been off for a month and you've just brought back into work. And for that, we might talk next time, maybe Tuesday training. I'll take you inside the training next week, and we'll talk about another way that doesn't involve lunging or liberty work, that you can really warm your horse up mentally and physically before you get on, so you can start building that nice strong bubble and you don't have to break away from each other and then build it when you get on. You can build it, then get on, and then go out for a ride. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow, Friday, for Friday Fitness, and you have a great rest of the day. Bye.